it's a very different thing from going, okay, yeah, I could get that, or I could get, someone who's been in Pro League for many years and has always been a mid to low rank performer, right? I could
Yeah.
absolutely get one of those players, but I'd much rather get a rookie who can be great.
So here I am with MrB from Beastcoast. This is not an Element 1 interview. No, this is about the NAL. And Beastcoast made some very exciting roster changes. MrB, I suppose we'll just start there. You guys picked up uh, Reverse, and oh my goodness. All right, I'm already choking.
Smith, no worries.
Spiff. Jeez.
It's a new
But
one.
Reverse and Spiff, why pick up these two players? Like, obviously, they're two very like highly touted talents and have been for a while. But why them and why now?
So, one of the things we were really struggling with last stage and we really needed was somebody who could just be a what we call a true entry, okay?
Okay.
Um, and for us, that's basically a player that, regardless of the situation, regardless of anything going on, if I say walk in, they just walk in, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we had vertical was that for us last stage, and he's good at it. But at the end of the day, he's one of the things about veteran players is they kind of think about a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that can be good in some ways, but for what we needed in that exact purpose, right? I need somebody who is gonna go brain off and is just gonna go, I'm gonna walk in, right?
Okay.
I'm gonna take this fight. And then regardless of whether the fight's good or not, is just gonna win it because they're better.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what Reverse is, and that's why, he's super valuable to us.
Yeah.
As
So
for
why bring in Spiff? Obviously, Hyper retiring wasn't as like much of a optional thing for you guys to do. You didn't opt into that. That just kind of happened. So why bring in Spiff as a replacement for Hyper? Because you kind of look at it from the outside, and Hyper was like that super vocal veteran. Vert's more on the quiet side. Hyper was like a vocal player. Like he has that experience. He's playing that flex role. Like how is Spiff kind of covering and filling in that gap that Hyper left?
Yeah, so as the season moved on, we were moving Hyper more and more towards like more of a supporting role.
Yeah.
And so with all that being said, we realized that our team functions best when I as the IGL can be kind of fluid around the map.
Yeah.
Because although I'm very good as a side anchor, our calls and comms get much weaker when I'm on site and not able to help out the roams. So we prioritize getting me on like that kind of midfield roam position. And in doing so, we basically moved Doc back towards our side anchor, and so we needed more of a flex player. We need flex or support, and Biff, he's super vocal, brings in a ton of uh, great understanding of the game from both Aerial Rise and from Astralis, and so it's really great to see, and he really brings a lot on that front. So in that kind of flex position, he's able to help out a lot and come up with a lot of plays and really bring some ideas to the table.
Yeah. And I do also kind of want to talk about like the IGLing side of things here because you are the captain and IGL of this team. How has your IGLing evolved since breaking out onto tier one? Like, because you're facing much stiffer opposition. All due respect, but Carnage and Company is not the same as facing off against Canadian and Foxay. Like, how has your IGLing kind of leveled up to accommodate for this stiffer competition?
So the in terms of what I have to do, it's not super different, right? I actually
Okay.
think the gap between pro IGLing and like maybe an adaptation and Challenge League, it can exist, but like there are teams, like Car Company actually, that Carnico, but that actually do have good adaptation and can
Oh,
actually
okay.
compete on that front. And so I think but when it comes, one of the big things you do need to change a lot more to is kind of play styles, right? You don't
Yeah.
have teams that are going to be able to just suddenly play super slowly, right? And so constantly adapt how your team can play. That's the big change from Challenge League to Pro League is what I found, right? Being able to make like, and so that's something we were good at in Challenge League on RTV, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of success, being able to switch from going super fast to going super slow. But that skill and that being able to do that as both an IGL and as a team is the most valuable thing to do in Pro League. Because when you're playing a team that suddenly switches how they're going to play, you need to be able to switch as well.
Yeah, and so do you think that one of the biggest limiting factors for a lot of tier 2 players isn't necessarily their mechanical skill, but their flexibility and their ability to swap between like play styles and like speeds of play, as it were?
100%. I think, but if I'm going to be honest, my biggest thing for when every single Challenge League player I ever talk to, try out, do anything with, it's just their comms, right? Tier 2 players, their comms are so much weaker. Um, and it's not a how do I s- it's not they don't say where their opponents are, right? Everyone can
Yeah.
do that. Right? Everyone at this level can do that, but it's constantly being aware of exactly what you need to say to help your team in terms of what you're doing, in terms of what your opponent's doing, recognizing what they're doing, coming up with plays that are actually successful, right? Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And that's like my big indicator for like this guy's not a Challenger League player versus this guy is a Challenger League player. And there's even pro players out of this, by the way, and like a lot of them. So I'm not like here to say that it's just Challenger League players, but it's very notable within Challenger League. Every person I kind of pick up as a rookie, that's the first thing I have to work with them on is making sure their comms get significantly better in a short period of time. The only thing for me though is that when I pick up a Challenger League player, they're much more likely to be like, yeah, my comms are bad. I will work on this, right? As opposed to pro players that have been in the league for however many years. It's harder to recognize your issues if you think you're already good.
Yeah. And kind of touching on that, you as an IGL historically, or at least since I've been following you from last year, you've historically always picked up new players or brought players up from lower leagues. So like in Challenger League, you brought up Packer and Gav from JJ's team, which was like tier 3. And since then, you're bringing up Reverse and Spiff, who, like Spiff, has had some time in Pro League in tier 1 play, but he's still very much like a rookie player. And Reverse, he's getting brought up for the first time. Why do you lean towards picking up these younger players this much? Like, what makes them so much more valuable in your eyes as an IGL than like picking up a veteran player who might have like some vocality or some experience to like contribute to the team?
So, in my opinion, experience doesn't mean anything, right?
Okay.
Experience has basically no value to me. I think unless you're an IGL, right, there's really no need for actual experience. It's all about just like what can you actually bring to the table, right?
Yeah.
When I'm playing with you on my team, are you gonna win this fight, right? Okay, great. Now, are you gonna help me win this fight, right? And so the only thing that experience can do is it help your teammates win more fights, but and as long as you've got a decent sport backbone, right, you can kind of train your fraggers to work together and do all that. It's not a hard skill to learn. Whereas learning how to actually just shoot back, that's much more valuable,
Yeah.
right? And so being able to pick up players that not to get to the money side of things, but they're going to be a lot cheaper, right?
Yeah.
And they're also going to likely have better mechanics, right? Which just means I can train them into what I need them to be. And they're also, of course, going to be able to be willing to learn, much more willing than somebody who's been in
Yeah.
the league for many, many years. Of course, if I'm looking to go all out, I'm not here to say that Reverse is going to be a better pickup than,
An
like
NJR or
modern
like
day
a
Neurers or
JV9V2.
NJR. Exactly.
Yeah.
But those are, it's a very different thing from going, okay, yeah, I could get that, or I could get, someone who's been in Pro League for many years and has always been a mid to low ranked performer, right? I
Yeah.
could absolutely get one of those players, but I'd much rather get a rookie who can be great rather than somebody
Okay.
who I know will be decent.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you're rolling the dice to a certain extent, but you're confident
A
that
little
you
bit.
can get like a positive result, better than average result, more often than you're going to get an average or below average result.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, cool. Looking towards the future a bit, you have stage 2 obviously in front of you, but the recently announced breakpoint is also
Yep.
something that Beastcoast is participating in, and the Atlanta Major is looming right there. Like going into these events, I don't know the time frame of when your roster changes were made and like how much time this particular team has had to work together and practice. I know your teams historically can get up and running pretty quick, but like with the form and the practice that you guys have had, what are your expectations going into Breakpoint and then later down the line into stage 2 and the Atlanta Major should you qualify to that?
So I think Breakpoint is gonna be a lot of a learning experience, right? It's best
Mm-hmm.
of ones. Best of ones are ruthless and a bit cutthroat.
Yeah.
With the kind of experience some of these players have, and or the time we've had together, I think we've gotten a lot better. But it's about what's actually going to happen on game day, and I think first game day is with a roster like this is going to be a little rough, right? It's
Yeah.
gonna there's going to be some growing pains, and being able to actually lose in something like that would be very valuable to our team. I'm not saying we can't win, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying I would actually, in some ways, rather have a valuable loss than just a blowout win, right? And
Okay.
so that's why it's nice to have these kind of pro teams competing because we're going to really experience, what it's like to compete against good teams on game day.
Yeah.
Now I'm not here to say that it's pro league because of course there's some differences between playing in a tournament like this versus pro league, but
Yeah.
these teams are going to be going all out, right? They are. It's not like they're going to be fucking about.
Yeah. Especially
This
the
is
Element 1 teams, because they've got a chip on their shoulder. They want to prove stuff against you
Oh yeah,
guys.
100%. And so it's basically gonna be really good practice for us going into it. But I wouldn't say I have us as like the favorites to suddenly win that event. Now
Okay.
going into pro league, right? Because we're gonna have had that little bit of experience beforehand, and also more importantly, I've had a bit more time together and all that. I think, yeah, stay tuned. I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm excited. I'm
All
excited.
right. So you missed out on the Copenhagen major in real rough fashion. Like, no way to futz about it. Like, you had 3
Mhm.
shots, didn't make it. Going into the Atlanta major, what would it mean for this team to play in front of a North American crowd? Because I know, like, you look at what happened at the Charlotte major, the All American final, with that crowd, that energy. What would it mean for Beast Coast to make it to that major and compete in front of the crowd?
Oh, dude, that's the dream. That's the dream. Yeah, no, I that's it's basically what I've been working my whole life for. So, so yeah, it would mean a lot. I'm really excited to make that happen. Yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
excited for that.
So,
That's
so what you're
I'm
telling
so
me,
excited.
what you're telling me is when I bet my channel points on you this time, I'm actually gonna get them back because you're gonna win and qualify.
Yes, yes. The
All right.
last stage was it was a fluke. Okay, I don't lose. That's not what I do. So, uh, listen, every single time, I've joined any league. It takes me a little time to get up and running. I gotta, work on little kinks of the roster, and then all of a sudden we start being successful.
All right, all right. I believe it. I'm buying the Kool-Aid. So, I do want to transition a little bit because we've been talking about the team, the major, the future. I want to talk about the now and more specifically the state of the game because the meta, people have been making some rumblings about it. There's talk about not enough bans, too many obnoxious defenders, Thorn 1.5, like where's the focus? What are your thoughts on the meta, especially with like the recent changes, where it's kind of like we got this Vigil change that changes things, but not really. We've got like Thorn 1.5.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the meta right now?
So I actually think the meta is fantastic. I think it's
Okay.
really fun to play, but and this is my big but. I think many of the defender gadgets they just have too many, right?
Yeah.
When I'm going up against a zombie and she throws down her 5th Kiwa barrier in the exact same place, and I'm playing, you know, Ash, and I've got 2 Ash charges, right? How am I meant to compete? Right?
Yeah.
Even if I go and Flores and hit every single Flores drone, I still can't destroy every barrier, and that's just crazy to me. I think that's a problem. Same with something like Fenrir.
Fenrir, yeah.
5 Fenrirs. I gotta. How can I clear all of them? Right? It's not.
They're
possible.
tiny too. I didn't think about it until recently, but the fact that Fenrir gets 5 of those things and they're like so small for how powerful they are, like that's just insane to me to think
Yeah.
about.
100%. And so I think it's just like it's a numbers issue, right?
Yeah.
Which makes the defense super strong. But I don't think that's inherently the end of the world. I think it does definitely need some nerfs because it is unfun to play against that much,
Yeah.
of that many strong things. Um, However, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think the game is still in a super fun state to play, even if it's not necessarily balanced. I don't think games need to necessarily be balanced, right? I actually think it's okay for things to be stronger than other things, right?
Yeah.
Being able to just hop in the game, play an OP character, and win. That's fine, right? That's okay. But what we do need to make sure of is that it isn't obnoxious to play against, right?
Yeah.
It could feel super fun to play and feel very overpowered, but it can't be obnoxious to play against. And right now, there are certain operators that are super obnoxious to play against.
Yeah, would Solus qualify? Because she's one of those operators where it's like you hear players talk about how annoying it is to play against her, but from like a top-down
So-
view, it can be hard to see the impact that a Solus
So-
has.
Here's kind of thing with Solus. Solus is insanely broken, right?
Yeah,
But because of her existence, everyone has just changed how they play, right?
okay.
And so it isn't super broken because there's no pre-placed drones anymore. At least not like solid. You can do a couple on like outskirts of the map, but you have to basically play entirely around the fact that Solus exists. You have to get off the drone, right? You can't be on it during prep phase. Like there's so many downsides to these things. Cutoffs basically don't exist the same way if Solus
Yeah.
is up. It's super strong.
Yeah.
But you don't notice that because you've just gotten used to her existence, and everyone
Okay.
plays around her existence.
So it's
Right?
kind of like when mirror windows were first introduced. I don't know if you were playing at that point in time, but it was kind of like mirror exists. This is just what we have to contend with now. Like
Yeah,
this is the new
exactly.
reality.
And so it's not that it's inherently broken because everyone's playing around the fact it exists, but it
Yeah.
makes defense so much stronger because it exists,
Okay.
right? So I wouldn't expect the pick rate like if Solus is up, right? I don't think she's gonna have a higher win percentage than when she's not up, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's playing around her regardless of whether she's being picked or not, right?
Okay.
As long as unless she's banned, right? But if she's
Yeah.
banned, then there's a difference. But I think as long as she exists on the board, you have to play as if she's up.
Okay.
And so it's a bit problematic.
Yeah. Talking about the map bans though, because the map bans have also been pretty contentious, pretty
Yes.
controversial. What are your thoughts on Villa and Theme leaving? Let's split this into two parts: the maps leaving and the maps like coming in. What are your thoughts on the two maps leaving? Because
Okay, let me make a quick statement. Okay,
Yeah.
about some things. First that I've heard, and first that are what's true, and then what actually is going on, right?
Okay.
Because a lot of people don't get to know about this because they're not, in Pro League, and this stuff is not necessarily publicly released. But
Yeah.
as somebody who doesn't really give a shit about any of that stuff, the map decisions were made exclusively by the top teams in every region. Okay?
Okay.
And as a team, that is a very strong contender in my region, right? I had no impact on these map choices. All right?
Okay.
So the top teams are going to make decisions based on what they are good at and what they are bad at,
Yeah.
not what is actually healthy for the game. Now, aside from that, the fact that Ubisoft representatives are going out and saying that they sent every single team, the options to look at these maps and, what they want to ban is blatantly untrue.
Okay.
And that's, I think, if they hadn't said that and they just chose the top teams, it'd be like, okay, that's a bit of bullshit, but whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I as somebody who is in Pro League can tell you, I did not have any impact, any influence, and neither did my org on what maps would be picked or banned. All right,
Yeah.
and I think that's a problem, right? Not
Yeah.
just because we don't have an impact, but because other teams do. Right?
Yeah, it's the fact that it's unequal, and as a team, as a competitive team, while it sounds like kind of wrong, if you're in it to win, yeah, of course I'm gonna vote out my worst maps. Like
Yeah,
if I don't play
100%.
theme park, fuck theme park, ban it. Like get rid
Yeah.
of it, replace it with Night Haven or something else that I might prefer more. Like from a competitive point of view, that is the best and most rational course of action, whether or not it's healthy for the overall ecosystem. And like
Yeah.
that's I think where the disconnect is when you limit the pool of who's in like having influence over those decisions.
Well, so for somebody like me, right,
Yeah.
I basically haven't lost Villa in 3 years, right? Like I'm not saying I've never lost it, but it has been my best map for like 3 years. I basically never lose it.
Yeah.
I'm insanely good IGL on the map. I'm super confident in myself on the map, right? It's now gone, right? And that's like a huge, huge nerf towards a player like me, right? Theme Park, it's also a super solid map for me, right? Gone, right?
Yeah.
And now you're bringing in two maps, right? One that, Consulate, I think, is actually going to be a good map pick for me in terms of the way I GL. But
Yeah.
I think the map is terrible. And two, Night Haven, which plays exactly like Club, right?
Yeah.
And I like, at that point, Club's been in the map for 8 years. Guys, like, pay attention, like, think about what maps you're getting rid of in terms of what maps we're adding. And so I don't mind adding Night Haven, but then get rid of Club. Club's been in the game for ages. It's getting boring, okay? If you want to keep it, that's fine, because it's a pretty unique map in some ways.
Yeah.
Okay. But now that we're adding Night Haven, which plays super similarly, now's the time to, switch it out. I'm not saying it has to go forever, but I'm just saying, give it a break, right? Let's try Night Haven for a bit, right? Give that a go. And then if we want to keep both, right, that's fine. We can add it back in, but, why do this?
Yeah.
Why have two maps that are now going to play the exact same way? And it's going to give huge favorability to teams that already liked Club, right? That were big, really good teams on Club are now going to be super good on Nighthaven as well. It's just going to make the teams objectively better.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're not removing theme park, a like traditionally super tactical and super structured map for skyscraper. You're removing theme park for like a more like gunner friendly map, as it were. Like obviously, it might Nighthaven might not play out like gun super gunny heavy or whatever, but like just in broad statements, that's kind of what's happening here, right?
What a little bit, but more so what I'm trying to say is, um, I don't mind the theme park change. I think it's fine because theme park has many issues.
Yeah,
Um, but it's more of an issue of you're removing theme park for a map that doesn't play like theme park, and so teams that are good at theme will not be able to um, necessarily transfer those skills to any other map. And so now that kind of playstyle of that map doesn't exist anymore, right? Like theme actually ends up actually playing a lot like skyscraper
yeah,
in some ways, and so it's okay. And then because we do have skyscraper still in the game, um, but I just think it's a lot better for replacing maps with maps that play similarly,
yeah,
right? Keeping that kind of play style in the game in some way, shape, or form. And then it means that the changes hurt certain teams. They matter less to teams, and they matter more in terms of just like balancing and enjoyment, right? And
yeah.
I think that's something that's super important to keep in mind, right? The idea behind making these changes is for like balancing and enjoyment, right? I think Oregon's a great map. I think
It's
Club, I think Club is a great map, but they're both boring. Like
yeah,
they've been in the game for too long. They've got nothing unique to them, right? And so when you're making these changes, that's what you should be thinking about, not what's fair, not what's you don't like. It's like we got to be making changes based on what's actually gonna make the game more fun to watch.
yeah. All right. So we're at the tail end of all the topics and stuff I had to talk about, and I don't want to keep you forever because I'm sure you've got
Yeah.
practice and all that good stuff. So, Mr. B, is there anything you want to say to close this out, to close out this interview?
Um, I'll just say we're gonna have a pretty exciting stage two, and I think for anybody who's watching along, right? Thank you. I really appreciate everyone's support. Okay. To everyone who's kind of doubts every roster change I make, goes on through, right? You know, every single time you guys have been wrong, so I don't think this time's gonna be any different. Watch your back. Uh, and then for that's about it. I think
All right.
basic gist of it is fuck everyone who doesn't support. For those that do, I love you.
All right. Hey, buy the Beastcoast gun skin.
Yes, buy me some Gunskin. Yes, there you go.
Yeah. I'm
Looks
good.
sick as fucking game.
I haven't bought it yet, but like it does look good. So
Yeah, the ink, dude. The lighting looks nice. It's nice, dude.